All right. Everybody, welcome back to Brown and Browner this week, the post-NCAA Final Four semifinal edition and the Women's Championship, and quite a number of things that happened over the weekend in sports that were quite interesting.
Yes, there was. And I have to say, for the women's, if we want to start there.
Yep.
While I really wanted Connecticut to win, just for Paige because of what she's gone through, and there have been no real stars at Connecticut that didn't win at least 2 or 3 titles, if you look at it over the last 20 years or whatever. So to see her win, happy for her. Just shocked that South Carolina threw up such a dud in such a big game.
I kind of saw it coming, and I kind of bet it that way. The star power for a lot of the teams across women's basketball this year was kind of like 1 or 2 players on each team, walking in, at least watching enough basketball that I did for women's basketball in college. I feel like the team that played the most cohesively during the season was actually UCLA. However, there was an interesting interview after the championship game yesterday where Gino was talking about how after they had played South Carolina during the season, which was a couple months ago, in fact, the team really came together. And it wasn't until the tournament started and I started watching Connecticut and just saw every piece clicking, like literally. And that's where, in my brackets, I took them all the way, fortunately. But because they were clicking, every single player on that team was playing to maximum potential. And that's the Gino Auriemma thing. I have to give the man credit. He is one of the Mount Rushmore coaches in all of basketball, period. We know that just because of the number of titles and the things that the program that he's built. But he got that team clicking in the right time to overcome what I thought was a great team in UCLA. And then, frankly, South Carolina's always been a team. I mean, they've always had that team concept. They always had a star player or two, obviously, but they've always had that team. And, Dawn Staley, hats off to her, unbelievable coach and unbelievable things that she's done. But the fact that Connecticut had the team clicking and the star power, it was a gimme for me, unfortunately. And that's why I think they overcame South Carolina so easily, because South Carolina was missing that one star power player in the middle that they've always had. They had Pow, don't get me wrong, but she's a guard, and that's a Paige Becker's, matchup nightmare,
Well, and I think people underestimate how good Paige is, but more importantly, what you said about the team and that freshman they have, she is something else.
Well, it is a rock star.
and more to your point, Paige is the name people know.
Yeah.
But she wasn't the most valuable player.
No, it's true.
So, I'm an underdog guy. Yeah. I always feel like Connecticut has had a wealth of players come through. They're like the old Duke or the old Kentucky, where it just seems like they always replenish and they get the best of the best, and they've been good. So, I outside of Paige, like in the past, I've always rooted against UConn, but there's something about Paige and her story and what she's gone through. I wanted her to win. I'm just shocked that a Dawn Staley coach team got blown out by 30 in the final.
I think it was the manpower. I mean, like you said, for Connecticut, every player stepped up. Their front court was huge.
Yes. Their defensive tenacity to hold South Carolina to those few points shows that everybody was doing their job, and you could see them rotating. You could see them doing the things necessary, playing physical, all of those things that, shows the maturity of the team, and that Paige may be leaving, but you better watch out. It looks like another UConn dynastic run is about to come.
Yeah, they'll reload. They'll get their star player. Flood might even stay. That might be the next eclipse. I mean, they've got a pipeline built on a name at the end of the day, which is just impressive in its own right.
Yep. And I give Gene all the credit. I don't know how all of his players feel about him, but they enjoy winning, and that's what he instills in the players, and the mentality of the players is not only that you're going to win, but knowing how to win.
Yep. No doubt about it. I think I was watching a little bit of the Sue Bird and Taurasi bit of it of the finals, and Taurasi, you could just see it in her. And she has I mean, it's how much good for the game they've done for women's basketball through Connecticut, South Carolina, both in the last 20, 30 years, almost, give or take.
Yeah, throw a little Stanford in there. Where did Dawn Staley coach previously? She coached Rutgers, is that right? Who coached
Rutgers? Yeah.
So and she had a little run there with that team, and I think that put women's basketball on the map. LSU, another one, and then Caitlin Clark and how she just globally brought attention, participation to the sport, and hopefully that continues with the young girls who are looking at these young women, and maybe idolizing them and wanting to be like them and getting in their parking lots and on their basketball courts to play more basketball.
Now, here's the interesting twist that's already happened, and same thing that we've always talked about with NIL and everything else. A lot of the star players for college basketball this year, women's basketball, have already come out and said, "Yeah, we're coming back to college." And then, you know why? Dinero, buddy, because they're not going to go get paid $75,000, $100,000 in the WNBA when they could be making millions in college at this point.
Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I do think the money grab is on. So what do you do to make the money? I mean, if it's the better fit for you to be in college, you might not want to go out.
It's a little bit of an indictment on the WNBA too, because you would think as a professional to be the 1%, as we've always said on this program, to be the best of the best. It's a recognition, it's a talent, it's an honor, but you ain't paid like it, unfortunately.
Well, here's a perfect example. Brittany Grimes, I think, was playing overseas. Part of the reason why she ended up getting detained. So for a professional player in any sport, but more so the main sports, because I could see a professional ping pong player maybe needing to, supplement their income. But to be in the big three sports and need to play somewhere else to supplement your income says a lot about the financial state of that particular organization or a professional organization. So hopefully that gets better.
I'll transition that note over to the world of hockey, where you do see a lot of players in the offseason from the NHL go play for their respective countries and leagues and things, Russia, Poland, different places, and most notably, the new great one, if you will, Alex Ovechkin.
Hey, my hat's off to him. I think my wife loves Gretsky, and she won't even honor what he's done. But here's the thing that people don't catch. I mean, granted, Gretsky is the greatest of all time. I'm sorry, there is no argument in my mind of that. There's a close second with Mario Lemieux, maybe. But for Ovechkin to score that many goals in almost the exact number of games, and he wasn't playing with what Gretsky played with in Edmonton. Think about that. He didn't have Yari Curry and all of these other guys around him, the Paul Coffeys, etc. Got to give him some credit. You got to give the guy credit, and that record may never be broken.
I think I caught something on ESPN earlier this morning about records that we won't ever see get broken, and I have a reason to believe that what we just witnessed yesterday, and I unfortunately I had tickets for the Blue Jackets game this coming weekend. Unfortunately, couldn't wait till then. What we witnessed yesterday was pure history. I don't think it's ever going to be broken in history because you don't see players lasting like this anymore in any sport. I don't care what you're talking about.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, he did it in the same record pace that Wayne Gretsky, who is all again at Mount Rushmore.
He is the man of the men.
Yes. So things that we will never see in history. It was impressive to watch, and all the credit in the world to Ovechkin. I saw an interesting meme yesterday where they showed goaltenders during Gretzky's era and goaltenders during Ovechkin's era, and how the pads have gotten a little bigger these days.
It's a little harder to score, I think, in my mind, than it was back then. Plus, I give Ovechkin credit. If I'm not mistaken, he's been with Washington the entire time, right?
Yes.
That's another thing.
Out. Yep.
Yeah, that's another thing. He did it with one team. Gretsky played on 3, right?
Yep.
So, the Kings, the Rangers, and the Rangers and the Edmonton Oilers. Got that another thing that speaks volumes because he's got players coming in and out, and he's been the constant. And it wasn't like he was doing it like some players at the end of their career. You sort of, give them the opportunity, and their team suffers because of it. Their team isn't suffering because Ovechkin's out on the ice.
He came out Friday after the game and said, "Look, I don't want an empty netter," and that was impressive to hear.
I love that. He didn't want to go back into the game because he didn't want to get a cheap goal. He wanted to earn it.
Yep.
So give number 8 all the credit, the great 8.
Yep.
Hats off to.
Yeah, 8 and 9 will live on forever in hockey, and I don't think it'll ever be broken. There is no question.
I have a feeling that's the case. I think it's going to be another record that may not be broken ever, could be, but may not be, is unfortunately Emmitt Smith's, because I'm a Walter Payton fan. I think Walter Payton deserved that record for playing with the crappiest teams ever. I think Barry Sanders was deserving of the record because he could have achieved it and decided not to. Emmitt Smith had an all-pro everything, but I can't see anybody breaking it now the way the NFL looks today. Now, granted, Saquon, Philly's giving him the ball. I don't feel other teams do that enough. Even the Derrick Henrys of the world don't get the ball that much. You still there, Promit?
Hey, sorry about that. My connection went weird.
Yeah, you froze on me, and everything I said,
It wasn't that it completely dropped for some reason. Now, you were talking about Barry Sanders' record not being broken. Not being broken is the last thing I heard.
Yeah, and Emmitt Smith, and I said I'm a Walter Payton fan, and I felt like Walter deserved that record because he played with the crappiest teams and still was able to achieve that when he was the only focus. Barry Sanders genuinely should have been the next person to take that, but he decided to retire. I don't know what the true reason really was behind that. Emmitt Smith's record, granted, he played with 10 different all-pro Hall of Fame players.
Yep.
So I think that he, while he own the record, I don't think it took him as much effort as the other two, given their teams. But I feel like that won't be broken. Saquon aside, the NFL has changed. Yes. The focus isn't the running back. Heck, they don't even want to pay running backs.
Yep.
So, being a running back, some running backs last 5 years, some may last 10. How long would you need to last to be able to break that record?
Yeah, no, I think that record will not be broken in football, baseball. I think I remember looking this up even over the weekend. Joe DiMaggio, 56 games, hit streak.
Hit streak? Will
not be broken. I mean, to me, and I only got to see the tail end of his career when I was growing up. Pete Rose is going to be the great best baseball player that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's a shame he's not in the game.
Outside of maybe another guy whose record won't be broken, which is Barry Bonds, and that's going to be controversial, obviously.
Yeah, that one's got that little asterisk on the side, so we'll see. I feel like in baseball, you just never know.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Shohei Ohtani. If there's a record that won't be broken. Who's hitting 50 home runs? Who's hitting more than 50 home runs and stealing more than 50 bases?
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to do that.
I think we are watching history with Shohei. I mean, yes, small sample size, couple years so far. Let's see if it lasts 10.
Yeah, Shohei's the man. He's the real deal.
There's no question. We've had a lot of guys be pretenders to the throne. This guy's a legit contender to the throne. There's no question.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
As long as he gets the right interpreter who doesn't take all of his money. It's
No
so
kidding.
sad to say, like, hey, I got this interpreter. I don't know what he's saying, but boy, he sure is taking a lot of money.
Yeah, no kidding. No
All right,
kidding.
let's talk about what's happening tonight.
Yep. So weekend results off of Saturday. So first off, I think the win with Florida over Auburn. I think I called it. You called it. So I think we were good there on both counts. We knew it was going to be a physical game. Florida kind of came back, did the bully ball thing in the second half, and honestly just took advantage of the game. They were the deeper team, and I think we said that on our last podcast as well.
Yeah, I feel like Auburn choked a little bit. Hit some free throws, guys.
Yes.
And plus another thing that I'm seeing in college basketball, which is because of to me, I'll call it the Stephen Curry effect, is that too many times they're bailing out and shooting the threes. If you aren't a good three shooting team, or if you're having a bad time, stop shooting it. Ask Arkansas about that. I mean, Alabama. They looked great one game shooting the three. The next game they were shooting the three like, I was out in the park. So I just, I was, and the sad thing is I have a sheet of with Auburn and Houston in the final, and unfortunately Auburn took that away. But I give Florida all the credit, and I actually had Florida winning it all on another sheet and felt like they would be the best team and come out on top. And it looks like now that Duke is gone, and remember, we talked about Duke, we talked about this, and before the games.
All but 20 seconds. All but 20 seconds. And we'll get to that one here in a second. But going back to Florida, I almost wanted to blame the refs the last 5 minutes of the game, because I feel like there was a lot of calls that weren't being called when they were letting people play, which is, I get the balance there, but there was a lot of hacking going on in the paint there, back and forth.
I agree. And if I was on Auburn's team, I would feel sort of funny about the result, but it is what it is. It's all part of the game, and you do what you do. Auburn had that opportunity. They came out flat in the second half, and they allowed Florida to quickly get rid of the deficit and then stay on top and be. And I'm sorry, you got to double Clayton. You got to do it.
That is okay. So if there are historic runs that have been built in the NCAA off of one player just catching fire and carrying it, this is a Khalid El-Amin. This is a this is that guy. He is that dude.
He is, and he has no fear. He goes to the basket with meaning and aggression, and it doesn't matter who's in front of him. He just seems to get it done. And Florida has, like you said, a pretty deep team. They got other guys who can show up. Although Condon hasn't done much of anything.
Condon was quiet. He missed a lot, and the rest, and Huff picked it up. I mean, that guy was balling too. Yep. So it was impressive to watch a team effort on Florida. But like I said, their depth was just what killed Auburn at the end of the day. Then let's get to the game of the night, I think, which was just it was special to watch. I mean, I had called it for Duke. I thought Duke was going to outplay them, and they did for 39 minutes and 40 seconds. And then came the last 20 seconds where the team with the biggest heart honestly came through, and that's impressive for Houston.
Yes, and there's an asterisk there. You spoke of the refs and what they didn't call in the Auburn game. I'm sorry, and I look. I'll let everybody know right now. I hate Duke.
Oh yes,
the thing with I hate Kristen Leitner. I should have been on that 30 for 30 because I hate Kristen Leitner, hate Duke.
Yep.
But I'll tell you this:
he got hacked.
That foul that they called on flag on that rebound from the free throw line was one of the worst calls at the worst moment
that's a play on in every other book, every other schoolyard, everywhere. You play on.
That foul changed the game because Houston still would have been down. Houston still would have been down, but after those free throws, now they're up, and Duke is chasing all of a sudden. And I think that was one of those moments where, and my wife called it out. She's like, "Look at how Flag looks on the bench, and look at how they look." And I think they were shocked. And after that moment, they just didn't. They weren't the Duke team that played that entire game. That last, the minute or less.
The commentators noted this, and frankly, I think a lot of us knew it walking in. They'd never been tested all season.
Right.
Ever.
They did
They
mention
had not
that.
been tested at one time during the season. And it was funny, the little subtle punch that Calvin Sampson took at the end of the game, too, in the post-game shot. Like, hey, they were 34-3 in the, I don't know, some cupcake league, whatever he said. I forgot the exact words. But then he's like, we were 34-3 in the Big 12. And that's where he's like, these were grown-ass men.
Well, and he's
That
not wrong.
Yeah.
He's not wrong. And that is part of the issues that you're seeing with the major leagues and some of these teams coming over. The ACC hasn't been bolstered, whereas the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, you know, and I think there is something to that when you look at big tournaments and having that experience to play in tough situations against tough teams, big teams, small teams, whatever it is. Duke's winning by 20 every game. That's sort of telling you something.
This marks the 5th consecutive year where a team who beat Kansas during the year ended up winning the title.
Well, first off, you should just take that Jayhawk thing off, man.
Well, you know what though? Even it was funny because they were interviewing some of the players from Houston after the game, and that's what they pinned it back to, was the double overtime win in Allen Fieldhouse over the Jayhawks in that gritty game that made them what they were. And then they went on that huge streak, and now this is where they are now. So credit to Houston all the way. I'm not giving Jayhawks any bit of credit because we suck. But Houston, you got 7, 8 players in that team that know how to play like grown men. And you know what? That's why I'm taking you for the final. I'm taking them over Florida tonight. That
might be a good bet. I'm not going against what I felt at the beginning of the tournament, that Florida was the best team.
They are. I think if we were to look at a paper matchup, I think Florida has a slightly deeper squad. However, for Houston, I think it still comes back to the fact that you got 2 guards that could carry your team. LJ Cryer was a monster, and he's second title. Think about that. With a second different team. He won a title with Baylor. He's trying to win a title with Houston now.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that Houston did something that no other team had been able to do, and that was basically hold Duke down.
Yes.
And if they can play that kind of defense throughout the game, they should always be in it. That was the thing we were watching, and we were watching the game. It's like, Houston sucks, but they're not out of the game because their defense kept them in the game even when they weren't scoring any points. And if they can do that against Florida, they can win.
They almost got into trouble when their front court started playing a little bit more hack-worthy and got in a little bit of foul trouble at the end of the game. They had 2 guys with 4 fouls at the end of the game in the middle.
Yeah, they had at one point they had 4 guys with 3 fouls, and I'm like, oh God, this could be bad.
And that's where Florida, if they got Hoff and Condon stepping up and playing to their potential, yeah, that's where it could be trouble. But I still feel like Houston's guard play is going to overcome it just like they have. And then Roberts is Roberts. We've seen him. He was a player of the year in the Big 12, and he's still a baller now.
Well, that's funny because I yelled at him early in the game because he screwed up a layup and he missed a shot. He had a stupid foul. He was doing a lot of dumb stuff.
He was.
And then he turned it on, and he became that player that he was, touted to be as from the Big 12. I guess here's the one thing that's going to make a difference. Will they be able to hold Clayton Jr. down?
That's the key.
Less than 30 points. If he scores 30 points, they're not going to win.
That matchup between Cryer and Walter Clayton Jr. is going to be the matchup of the tournament, and it's going to be fun to watch them go back and forth. I can almost see bucket for bucket on both ends. It would be fun to watch.
Although I feel like Clayton's got more range.
He does.
He's got all of the attributes.
Clayton's just got ice in his veins. I mean, that dude, even if they somehow lose, he's got to be Player of the Year nominee. Like, that is just impressive to watch that kid. It's just so polished. So polished.
I agree. And we were saying that about Cooper Flagg, but unfortunately, the flag is not being flown on Monday because again, I don't know if Houston would have won or lost. Yeah, but that referee call was so bad that I think it just shocked everything.
The call was bad, but then at the same on the other end, Flagg had a look. You don't get a better look than that. Right in the paint, you got the height advantage, you got the jumper, but you just didn't have enough oomph on it.
Yeah, that was short. He did sort of the Patrick Ewing short shot, but I guess my question is this, and I've talked to somebody else about this. My brother, actually, former ball player. I looked at that before the play happened. You knew where it was going.
Oh, yeah, you knew it was going, yeah.
But why didn't he take it to the hole? Because you force the referees to do one of two things. In his height, he might get that basket anyway, but that's when you put the refs on point and make them make the call.
Coming out of the timeout, I swear to God that Shire should have or would have told them to go flag penetrate. If you don't have it, you kick out to Knuppel, and Knuppel takes the shot.
Yep, or even hit it to one of those forward centers that they have, because he was doing that all game. Penetrate, double, bounce pass, dunk.
Yep.
That's what I was expecting to. He just came up, and I get it. Had he made that shot, that would have been the next. Yeah, it would have been the next Leitner, just a little bit closer to the basket.
And
it
more America would have hated Duke more than ever before. Yeah.
Yes. So I get it, but boy, I think if he takes that to the hole, he's gonna get fouled at the very least.
That's what I would have thought, especially with the foul trouble that we mentioned with Houston. That's the thing. Like that just was. It was a little puzzling to see that play, but like you said, it came down to two things. It came down to the potential non-foul that shouldn't have been called, and it came down to the fact that you had the opportunity and just didn't execute. So,
if he hits the basket, nobody's talking about it.
Again, conversely, give credit to Houston. Resiliency and battle. Like that's just what Houston is bred to do. And that was impressive to watch.
Well, and that's why they play the game. So many people, us included, people have their own perspective and what's going to happen. And they're just deeper, they're this, they're that. But at the end of the day, it's about heart, baby. Who wants it more? Who's going to dive on the ground and maybe break their arm trying to get that loose ball? Who's going to
think about the cold-blooded shots that Clayton made in that Auburn game, where the momentum was easily going just a little bit to Auburn, and all of a sudden you see this icebreaker from either him or Hawk, like every time for Florida.
Well, again, it's about how you play in the big moments.
Yep.
And that'll define a game. I mean, you can play great for, like you said, 39 minutes, but if you're sleeping on that last minute, you're going to find yourself watching like the rest of us on Monday night.
Yep, that works. No.
I think Florida's going to win. I think it's going to be a low-scoring battle, and I think it'll be something like 70-65 Florida.
I'm going 79-71. I'm going Houston. I think Kelvin Sampson gets that title he's always been looking for, and it's because of the grit and the team that he's got this year. Because Roberts is there, the other guys now they've been battle tested through a very tough game, and frankly, I think the X factor is LJ Cryer. The guy's been there. He's put up the numbers. He was solid yesterday during the Duke game. He never flinched at the end of the game. So he's solid. Walter Clayton's going to put up his numbers. He's going to put up 30, no question. I'm calling it right now. This could be a game where Houston wins and Walter Clayton deserves the player of the game, honestly. But
potentially,
yeah,
potentially, we'll see. I think. What has Sampson won in his career?
No titles, no.
But he's had some good teams in the past.
Oh yeah, no, he's had good teams. I don't think he's always had the next hump team to like take him over the edge. He's always had a great team, and he's always been a solid coach, in my opinion. Despite the knocks of the NCAA stupid violations, hey, you made a phone call to a recruit. Okay, whoop-de-doo, I'm sure. There's more worse than that across the NCAA. We know it to be true. But the guy is a flat-out coach. He's a coach. He should be well-respected for what he's done. He's recruited a hell of a team. He's put together a great team. Todd Golden, this is his first dance, I think. Young coach.
Well, how old is he? Like 25?
Barely. He's got barely any peach fuzz sitting on his face.
Someone needs to help him with his hairdo, too. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I expect a little bit more style and panache out of a Florida Gator coach, And Billy Donovan had probably a stylist,
I feel like this. I feel like Houston, they can win.
Yes.
This isn't the best Houston team to be in the final.
Compared to what? The Fly Slamma Jamma?
Fly Slamma Jamma was all that.
No, I don't disagree. Fly Slamma Jamma was a better team. But we're talking about the modern era. This is a whole different game, different process.
True,
right?
True that. I mean, we'll see. I don't even know what the spread is right now, but the fact that Houston beat Duke, and I don't know what the spread was there, but I'm thinking it wasn't 2 points.
The Duke one was actually a 4-point spread.
Okay.
The reason I know that's because I had the bet from last summer on Duke winning the title, and I could have got away a 14-1 shot.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't leverage that by betting a little bit on Houston.
I should have. But okay, so tonight's game it's only a point and a half.
Yeah,
point and a half favorite in Florida right now. Yeah,
I could see it being a toss-up.
Yeah, it's literally going toss-up.
I still got Florida. I tell you what, let's put a wager on it.
Well, side bet, I'm down for it.
Yeah, nothing to hurt each other. We do $20, $25. That's fine.
Yep, that works.
All right. We'll have a virtual lunch.
Yes, virtual lunch. I'm down for that 100%. I think that'll be a good bet. So,
all right.
I think we're in for a fun treat tonight. This will be a good capstone to a good NCAA season where we get to see two teams collectively play against each other, not just one player or another. And it's going to be fun to watch the battle.
Now, here's a question for you. Been hearing a lot, at least leading up to this game, where March wasn't showing enough madness for people. People want to see the upsets. They want the 12 to make it to the Final Four or whatever. Does that take away from the quality and excitement behind the games if there aren't many upsets like this year?
The thing is, people have always looked for the upset and they've looked for the Cinderella run. Yeah, the first weekend is meant for that. It's always been the first weekend.
Right, I agree. Yep.
But beyond that, we've just been lucky in the last few years where we've seen, an 11 seed, a 14 seed, whatever the heck came out, the 16 seed beating a 1. We've been fortunate to have been spoiled by that. But again, those were limited runs. You've never actually seen an 11 seed win the whole darn thing or anything like that.
No, what's the lowest seed that's won? 5 or 6, maybe?
I think no. I know Connecticut won as a 7 one time. Because that was the Khalid El-Amin year. And I know Michigan State has won as a low seed too when they had Cleves and the crew over there. So again, there's never been that true Cinderella all the way since the Wolfpack, probably NC State way back in the day.
Yeah, I was trying to remember when Carmella was a rookie, what seed Syracuse was when they went. They were 3.
Yeah, they were 3. Kansas was a 1-3. They were a 3. I didn't know that one too well. but no, you've never seen that true Cinderella. So yeah, I mean, I get people's allure of fascination with wanting to see the Cinderella runs and all that. And maybe we'll still see that, but you shouldn't go honestly beyond the first week of wanting that knowing the realization of that expectation, I should say.
I don't disagree, but it has been an expectation, and I heard it on various news and ESPN. It's just like, what do you expect? That's why they're seated where they're seated.
Right.
Great. You won the Big Sky. Okay, you look good, but you look good against Big Sky competition. You don't look good against SEC or Big 12 competition.
Exactly.
So, the expectation shouldn't be that. And we have been fortunate. This is the second time since 2008 that all 4 of the top seeds made it. So that tells you there have been more parity or more upsets that have occurred throughout the last 15, 20 years.
The 2 conferences that had the strongest footholds in the tournament, meaning the most teams in, and the highest rated schools got the 2 best teams out of the conference into the championship game, the SEC and the Big 12.
Why wouldn't you think that would be the expectation every year?
Yeah, exactly.
And here's a question for you, and we can talk about this a little bit. We have different, various opinions about the NIL and the impact going forward. Is the NIL going to lead to more parity, or will it actually lead to more of chalk and good teams getting better?
I think it will lead to a little more parity at the early stages, because you will see star players go to smaller schools because they're offered more money, let's say. However, when it comes to the grand scheme of the NCAA tournament, I think you're going to see what you saw this year. The upsets may come in week 1 and the first weekend, and maybe even into the second week or something like that. You're not going to see it in this final weekend, in my opinion. I don't think because again, NIL is going to prevent people from building teams in a team sport, whereas they are going to build isolation views of star players on a smaller school that get the notoriety, get the money and all that, and build their draft status. I think the only thing that's going to help it is this transfer portal stuff. But again, it's also going to come down to the money. I'm only going to transfer to said school if I'm paid X amount of dollars or have X amount of opportunity or play time. And egos are going to get in the way at the end of the day, is what I'm saying.
Well, I feel like I agree with you with, it can promote some parity. I think it'll promote parity in this way, besides just the money aspect, the guy getting, little money here to go and you get more money going there. I think you're also going to see some of these players who, again, remember, they're getting all of the McDonald's 100, whatever it is. They go to these various schools. If you're not getting ticked, if you're not getting enough playing time, hello, Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yep.
That, I think, is what's going to cause people to move as much as the potential money. But how do you promote yourself if you're playing the bench and not on the court?
Exactly.
So I think that those players who are playing out of Kentucky, playing out of Duke, playing at Houston, even, who feel like they got game, who were, Mr. Indiana, Mr. Wyoming, Mr. whomever, and they're not getting that playing time, I think that's when you'll see people go, and that's going to promote parity. And I think what you'll also see, and we've talked about this, is you're not going to see these dynastic runs by, the Dukes and whomevers, because too many players are not going to be there to 4 years, to wait until their turn when they're a junior to be able to play, because they want to get that marketing out there when they're a freshman, when they're a sophomore.
And that's where I say, like, even the miraculous run, I call it a miraculous run because of what it was for UConn the last 2 years to win the title back to back. I honestly don't think you're going to see that often enough. You're not going to see the chances for back-to-back titles in NCAAs again. I mean, look how long we waited.
Players there.
Yeah, look how long we waited even from the Florida days when Joakim Noah and those guys were there. It took a while. And frankly, it took a miraculous run by UConn team that was, again, a team that decided to stick around, not with too many big names on it,
right,
to win back-to-back with the same players that decided to stick around and win for Hurley, essentially.
Right.
So is there a team that may be out there that could do that, like a Duke, that could build together 2 straight years of a recruiting class? Yeah, that might happen. But again, going back to kind of what we talked at the beginning of the program here with things that won't be broken, you're not going to see dynastic runs in college basketball.
I think you're right about that. I don't think that people are going to stay long enough. And I heard something about Flagg being a #1 draft pick. I thought that you had to be in college 2 years.
No, they changed the rule again. What was it, 5 or 6 years ago? I got to
go back. We talked about this. Yeah. So
it's 19.
So how are you going to, keep a player when they get to college and all of a sudden they blow up?
Right.
How are you going to keep them from going to the pros and making, hundreds of thousands to millions versus whatever you're paying?
Think about Duke's roster. Duke's 5-man roster is all projected in the top 3 rounds in the NBA draft. And we're talking about what, 3 freshmen, and
So there you go. I mean, so how are you ever going to keep a team long enough to be able to make that kind of run? You better hope that your team is playing team ball and there isn't a true star. Right. That will help you keep the team together. The college experience only goes so far nowadays. Yep. As far as I can make millions and be a pro and not have to do homework or anything else, or I can stay in school. The school experience, I have to tell, for every athlete that's out there, enjoy that school experience, because once you get into the pros, you're actually working. It's a whole different ball game.
Yep.
And expectation.
Yep. 100% agree. And that's the thing. I think a lot of what I call would be the essentialness of needing to go to college and stand on your own 2 feet and learn those things during your late teens and early 20s. It's been lost in this generation, going back to more societal stuff. I don't know if that's going to exist because of everybody looking forward to seeing the money and seeing all the popularity and all the social and all that stuff that happens in this day and age. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. But I think NIL is going to structure a little more parity at the onset. But again, we're going to see teams win team sports at the end of the day.
And I'm sorry, it's always been weighted to the bigger. And I guess that's just the evolution of everything, right?
Yeah.
If I see a team on the TV, that's the whole point of advertising and having all that, and they're doing well, and I like these players, this is the place I'm going to want to go.
Of
Heck,
course.
they showed the little, what's his name, Knipple.
Yeah.
They showed him as a
Yeah.
kid taking a selfie at the Final Four with Duke coming in, and here he is on the Duke team now.
Yep.
So I can see how that works and why the rich always get richer, because those are the names you know, and those are the programs that get the most recognition. So if you are a player who thinks they have NBA talent, they're going to want to go there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the same holds true in football. I mean, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the school that gives you the most amount of time on TV and the national stage. You're going to go to the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Alabamas, everybody that's on TV in prime time. So you get to know your name. Simple as that.
Man, you learn pro style offenses and all of those things too, which, you may not have that opportunity depending on which school you go to.
Yep.
So, we'll always see the haves always having and the have-nots trying to get a little bit more at the table, but at the end of the day, they're given the smallest piece of the dessert.
Yep. Very true. Very true. I think, not to transition the topic, but normally I don't watch the NBA during the season. I don't care to. It's just too long of a season, and I'd rather just wait till the playoffs. Frankly, these next 3 weeks with the end of the season and leading into the playoffs, I couldn't be more excited as a basketball fan, because it's the perfect segue away from college basketball. You got a 4-way tie from 4th through 8th in the West.
That's where all the excitement is. It's in the West. Yeah, but it's in the West. I don't feel like that excitement's in the East. You got Cleveland, you got Boston, and then you got everybody else.
Yeah.
But I do feel like the West. I mean, the fact that the Lakers beat down Oklahoma City. This is Oklahoma City that won, have like 2 or 3 different 10-game plus winning streaks. They beat them down.
They beat them down in OKC and played good defense. And then I think just like 2 days before, the Warriors took out the Lakers. And then the Warriors also took out the Nuggets. And now the Nuggets are a potential play-in team, which is just crazy. So
that is crazy.
I don't see that drama building in basketball. So, as much as tonight's game is going to be great for college basketball, you can pick right up with some other exciting basketball here in the next 2 weeks leading to the NBA playoffs.
Well, and I agree with that. With all of the excitement of opening days, some of which will be canceled depending on where they are because of the weather. Right. I just baseball is you say that about basketball because they play 82 games. Not all the games are that meaningful until you get to this point of the year. Baseball doubles that because they play 162 games. And how many games are meaningful right now?
Exactly. Yeah. Right now, to me, the only thing I'm paying attention in baseball is if you see some sort of hitting streak by Shohei, and I know it's the Dodgers versus everyone else. That's it.
They got a little bit of something else to discuss, which, we touched on our last conversation, these new bats.
Yeah.
But if they're meeting the specs of what's been, identified as legal for that sport, not much of a controversy until it'll be like the tush push until all of a sudden you start seeing more and more home runs. But the funny thing about this is that's what baseball wants.
Yep.
Baseball wants that because that's the exciting thing. I'm sorry. Maybe back in the 50s, watching somebody pitch a no-hitter was great. And don't get me wrong. When I see one, I make sure that I watch it. I want to see it happen.
Yep.
But if you're the paying public, you don't want to go to a baseball game and watch somebody strike out 27 people.
The last time I went to, I don't even know what they call that dunk down in South Chicago anymore, for the White Sox. I went to a game there. It's been at least 10 or 15 years. They put up 21 runs, and that was fun to watch. But you know what? Since then, that organization, no, they couldn't pay you to go to a game.
You know what sucks about the White Sox? I'm a Cubs fan. My wife's a White Sox fan. We have this, I don't know, thing where what I like, she doesn't like, and vice versa. Yep. But I put a bet on the White Sox the first day for them to lose. And I had the Cubs to win, and I had a couple other things. I had all of this parlay. The White Sox decide to win that game. I'm not sure they've won another game since.
Probably not.
It's like, really? So for those who are Chicago fans, don't bet Chicago. They'll just break your heart every time. If you bet against them or bet with them.
Think about this in the city of Chicago. So you got the White Sox, which obviously had the lowest payroll, lowest everything, lowest anything. You can't even name a player on this online. The Cubs, being who the Cubs are from a brand recognition standpoint, are in the bottom third of spending in payroll for the third biggest city in America. and arguably a top 5 popularity in terms of baseball prowess with the Cubs. You're in the bottom third of spending in all of baseball.
Yeah, but hasn't that been the Cubs thing throughout? Like if you think about it, they didn't go 100 plus years without winning a championship because they were spending money. Right. They were throwing out some of the worst products, especially in the 70s, and we got lucky and won and then lost to San Diego in the playoffs and all of that. But historically, they really haven't put a lot of money into the team until, I have to say, Ricketts came in and he won.
Yeah.
And he probably said, wow, I put a lot of money into this team and I won, but I'm a businessman. Now that I've won, I can use that one victory
to build
and go back to the way things, but go back to the way that things are or were and be okay with that. The funny thing is, even though the Cubs have maybe on the bottom third of salary, I think they're projected to win 90 games this year or something right around there. Vegas has them, which could get you to the playoffs. Depends. So it's not that they aren't competitive, which if you can get lucky and save $1 and be competitive, I'm okay with that.
I called that the Kansas City Royals a few years ago when they somehow won a title. Shoot.
Yeah. But I don't disagree with you, though, and it's been historically Chicago. It's funny you mentioned the White Sox. So the White Sox are owned by Jerry Reinsdorf. The Bulls are owned by Jerry Reinsdorf. The Bulls haven't been really good since Jordan. They had a brief, thing with Derek, but he made that fatal mistake of trying to do a double pump. 1 minute left, we're up 10. Instead of just taking the foul, let me be fancy, and he ruined his career from that. Yep. And the Bulls haven't done anything really since then. Yep. They had the Thibodeau years where he was playing just the first 5 starters, 45 minutes of the game, and then expect him to be fresh for the playoffs.
Till he wore the ankles off Jimmy Butler. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, we had Paxson and Gar Hurd and people who sounded like they knew what they were doing until they started doing it, and you're like, they don't know what they're doing. I just feel like it's been a Chicago thing. We've talked about this before. Jerry Reinsdorf shouldn't be an owner, period.
Yep.
He was the guy, if everybody remembers, he was the guy that drove to the strike, I think it was like 94 or whatever, and maybe it was earlier, and they had Albert. Then after the strike, he said the players are playing too much. He was sort of pushing that. And then as soon as the strike was over, when they had the best team with Frank Thomas, Robert Ventura, and all these guys, he went and got Albert Bell, and it ruined the franchise because Albert Bell was a total ass, and he wasn't the guy, and he paid them the most money. He was the highest paid player. So the Sox, he forced the strike, saying the players are making too much money, and then paid Albert Bell an enormous sum, and then they went right down the fucking drain.
Yep.
So that's Jerry Reinsdorf. Jerry Reinsdorf is the guy who said organizations win championships, not players. When he had Michael Jordan. Yep. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Jordan, what do you need? Here, would you like me to wipe your ass? Okay, I will do that for you. Because Jordan was the one driving that, not the organization.
Agreed.
These are the owners, the McCaskies.
Yep.
The Bears won 1 championship. They didn't want to pay one player because they knew Wilbur Marshall. They let him go to Washington. Then everything fell apart. We never won again.
Yep. Very true.
So, I mean, hockey, Bill Wirtz.
Yep. Hockey works.
Bill Wirtz didn't want to show the games. They were showing the games on an off station called WNS SNS, Channel 44 when I was a kid, and I used to watch it. Yep. The channel went Spanish after that. And he didn't want to show their product because he thought that not showing their product would make people come to the stadium.
Right.
And until he died, the Blackhawks were horrible. They won that 1 championship in like 61 or whatever. Did nothing else until he died. And then Rocky took over. And for a 6-year period, they won like 3 championships.
Yep. And then you disbanded Taze and Kane and the whole crew.
Well, you didn't want to pay them the money. We got a taste of victory. Now we're going to use this for the next decade and make money off of it and not pay our players. What they possibly can do, though, is they got the #1 draft pick just a couple years ago. They got my guy
Bedard.
Bedard. They got Bedard, and they're right back in it again. So they might be able to build their team from the bottom up, getting a couple of great players and put some other players around them. And then when it comes time to pay them, they'll be gone. Yeah. So, and that's sad because New York and LA are known for spending money. LA seems to be a little bit more successful in spending the money. They've got Matt Stafford. They were able to, build a dynasty in the Dodgers. The Yankees haven't done anything even since the older Steinbrenner was around, right? How many championships have they won in the last 15 years?
The Yankees have been a mess because they just don't know how to manage their teams well enough. They're willing to pay the money, but they can't outbid. But they can't outbid the Dodgers, and they can't outbid sometimes the Red Sox, which is the funny part.
That is funny that they couldn't outbid the Red Sox. But you would think that they would have. They went to the finals last year. Went to but they lost.
They got spanked.
That should be consistent. But the thing is, those two bigger cities than Chicago spend the money. Chicago refuses to spend the money.
LA, I get what they're doing. They're bringing a successful product to feel they're building the biggest franchise ever in terms of money, payroll, talent, everything else. They're mortgaging the next 40 years of their franchise, in theory, by financial paperwork.
Yeah, right.
But for the next 5-10 years, you've got arguably one of the best baseball players in history, and alongside that, some of the best players in history, all alongside it, 1 through 9, and pitching.
They've got it everywhere. It's almost unfair. It's almost unfair.
It is. But you know what? That's baseball because you have no cap. If you had a cap, you would see greater parity. You'd see some of these smaller markets with some stars. I can't name a single guy on the Twins roster, the White Sox roster. I can't even name players. Like, that's how bad the MLB is right now at the bottom tiers in the small markets.
That's true. That's true. And they're keeping it like that. That's big money. Will allow some of that trickle-down effect from our contracts to the little teams. But as far as you being competitive, not going to happen.
I mean, it pisses me off here. I'm not an Orioles fan. My son is here locally. The Orioles have one of the best farm systems I've ever seen, and as a baseball fan, even growing up as a Cardinal fan. If they would have been able to keep from Machado through now on that roster because we were willing to pay, they would be the best team in baseball. No questions asked. You've got the #1 prospects every year coming out of AAA, out of the Orioles system. But what happens? They play for a year, they become Yankees, they become Dodgers, they become whatever.
Yep. No, that's a great example. And actually, you reminded me of one thing. The only reason the White Sox won their championships, I give Ricketts credit. At least they paid the money. The Cubs won their championship. John Madden tried to lose it, or not John Madden, Joe Madden. Joe Madden tried to lose it because he wanted to put his stamp on it and put the reliever in too soon. And my son, I got two stories. So my son, I'm drinking Jägermeister, right? And I'm celebrating. The Cubs are finally going to win. I was there when they choked against the Florida Marlins. I knew how it felt. I know the Bartman. I remember that. Joe Madden decided he wanted to do that, and they started losing right away. You could see that they were going to lose the game. They were about to do another Cubs catastrophic, failure. And I'm drinking, and my son took my Jägermeister bottle and took it away from me because I was getting angry I started seeing this. And
so as soon as Aroldis Chapman started walking toward the mound,
it's like he's in there too early. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. And then he had no one to go to.
Oh.
And Cleveland was coming back. Cleveland coming back with vengeance.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is where, if you are a religious person, I can see why. Because there had to be divine intervention there because it rained, and that took the momentum away.
Yep.
And Hayward.
It slowed down the collapse.
And Hayward, who was not really playing well, was able to rally the troops during the rain delay, and they came out and played to win.
Yep, no, not enough credit given to Brendan Hayward, honestly.
I mean, the guy saved.
Yep, he saved the city. He saved the city.
Because that would have been a riot. If the Cubs would have blown that would have been a riot here in Chicago.
Riots. Yeah, there would have been riots.
Yeah. But so that was one story. The second story is this. The White Sox, when they won, I think it was 2006, they won with guys that you couldn't even name. There was nobody on that team that was a
The
star.
big
It was
bad
like, these boys can play.
Mark Burley, that's all I can name.
Yeah, but they were like, these boys can play, and it's like he got them on the cheap. It's like he went, out onto the ball of some play yards or whatever, and said, "Hey, you're in your 20s and you look like you could play baseball. Come play with us." And they won, but they didn't keep the momentum for that either.
No, that's true.
So it's just like they don't want to win here in Chicago. They just want to make money.
Yeah.
The McCaskies need to sell it, but they won't. They just want to make money, leveraging Soldier Field.
You could make Chicago the greatest sports city in America very easily if you were the right owner.
Oh,
the right set of owners, I should say.
Set of owners.
A fan base that will be loyal forever. There's no question.
Yep. I agree.
But
it is a Bears town. It is a Blackhawks town. Yeah. It is a Cubs town.
Yeah.
So
why? South of 75th, it is a White Sox town. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not down on the Sox. I used to like the Sox until what I described with Reinsdorf, what he did. Right. And then I hated the Sox because he would contradicted exactly what he said and took an opportunity for the White Sox to win it all, flushed it down the toilet, and then brought a guy in to make sure that we never do it again.
Yep. No, like I said, it could be arguably the greatest sports town in America, but the owners will always kill it, unfortunately. It's so true. So true.
I mean, I have to say, like, being from Kansas City, to see Kansas City Royals do what they did. Yes, they were bad for a long time since George Brett left, but then they started winning. The Kansas City Chiefs, heck, I grew up on, Len Dawson and Ed Podolak and, players like Willie Lanier, Otis Taylor, who I had his jersey. Those are the guys I grew up with. They were great at the beginning of the Super Bowl era, and then they sucked until like Bono and Montana got there.
90s.
Yeah, but then they really didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything.
But now they've done the right things. It's been under the same ownership the whole time. They've done a total change. Now they are the standard that everybody plays up to.
I'll end on this note. So I don't know if you've kept some of the Kansas City news. There's talk about, so during the last, I think it was the last election cycle or the cycle before it, Missouri voters were given a chance to vote on funding increases to renovate Arrowhead Stadium. They shot it down.
Yes, I knew that. Yep.
However, the state of Kansas, right across the way, by the way, for those of you who don't know, they play in Kansas City, Missouri, not in Kansas City, Kansas.
Right there and right there.
Yep. Kansas, in a fairly wealthy area. That's where you used to have what we used to call the Sprint campus. It's about 200 acres that the Sprint telecommunications company used to own in a prime part of the city, in a really well-to-do area, Overland Park.
Mm-hmm.
The proposition is to redevelop that entire area, since Sprint doesn't exist anymore, into the new Arrowhead Stadium. There is a $3 billion measure on the table right now from the state of Kansas to fund it. Whereas the city of Missouri, or not, sorry, the state of Missouri and the city of Kansas City, Missouri, shot down a $500 million incentive to renovate the existing Arrowhead Stadium. Now, Arrowhead Stadium owns a lot of prestige for those of us who are Kansas City fans. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it does sit away from town in the middle of nowhere, where you've got the Plex with them and the Royals. The Royals are relocated to downtown. That's already been in place. They've already got that officiated. They've already got it carved out. It's in the process.
So they got that for the Royals, but they wouldn't do that for the football team.
Well, not the downtown. They couldn't get the space over there. But for the football team, yeah, so they're moving the Royals completely over to a different area near where Kemper Arena used to be, if you're familiar with that area in Kansas City.
Right, yep.
However, the Chiefs aren't getting the same level of support to build a Plex, if you will, like where they sit today. So the state of Kansas has approved a $3 billion initiative to build an entire Plex for them, all on taxpayer dime, because they could bring them over and turn it into literally the next Mecca for football. And it would be a dome stadium that could host everything from now until eternity.
And that's where everybody should be going, because that's how you're going to make money. You'll be able to host those big time
year round. Why do you think the
Rams? Exactly.
Look what the Rams did.
Hey,
out in LA.
Yeah. And Detroit was able to do it because they have a dome. They're too stupid to do that here. And they're, looks like they're trying to do it there. But I'm sorry, Missouri. Shame on you for allowing this to happen.
Yep. You already lost a franchise on the other side of the state in St. Louis, and now you're just going to honestly lose the other one on the other end. Which I'm all for moving to Kansas City, Kansas, close to my own parents' house, so I don't mind.
I'm not. There's history there.
The history of Arrowhead is special. Yes.
Yeah.
We are the loudest stadium in the country and in the world, for a reason, because of the way that that place is built and the history and nostalgia.
So why wouldn't you piggyback on that as opposed to allow it to go away, and all of the revenue that it could attract, you're not getting now. So Missourians, shame on you.
Just a quick note for everyone listening here. Kansas City Chiefs, loudest stadium in the world, by the way. We broke the decibel record. We own the Guinness World Book of Records there. Kansas Jayhawks, Allen Fieldhouse. Old place, only fits 16,000 people. Loudest college stadium in the entire country, 150 decibels. Think about those two fan bases right there within a 60-mile radius.
Well, now you would have that.
Yep, and imagine if we build a facility like we're talking about in Kansas City, Kansas.
Man, that hurts my heart.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I mean, I think there's still hope to keep Arrowhead alive, but they're going to have to kick in some money from the city and the state over there to keep it refreshed. We'll see where it goes. And frankly, the funny part is if they do move the stadium, it's 10 minutes from Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce's house.
Hey, speaking of which, before we go off real quick, why aren't professional athletes doing a better job of securing their facilities? Okay, I get it.
Let's touch on that next time.
It seems like people know your schedule, and boom, they're robbing everybody now.
It just happened to another one, I think last week. I forgot who it was.
They sure did. I forget who it was. There were two. And I was like, wow. So they're just making it a thing. This is okay. Where are they playing this week? Oh, they're on the road. All right, we're going to rob their house.
I'm sorry, but a ring camera system don't cost much these days.
Well, plus, maybe you want a dog. Maybe you want, a house sitter. Something.
Well, the house sitter didn't work out for Joe Burrow.
Okay. That's wait, what's the whole story behind that? Wasn't there a house sitter there? Wait, there was a house sitter when he got robbed?
It wasn't just a house sitter, it was a swimsuit or a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model.
I hope she was okay.
She was okay. Yeah, no issues there. She didn't even know they were hitting robbed, but they got robbed.
Wow. Yeah, I'm surprised they don't do a better job of that. But we can talk about that next time. I wish everybody a wonderful day, a wonderful week. And tonight's game is going to be something. Tune in. We'll see who prevails when it counts.
And you heard that bet first here. Lunch is on whoever loses here.
That's right. You got it. We got it on video. Lunch, whoever loses owes the lunch. We'll do, whatever, DoorDash, and we'll have lunch together.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
Be well, everybody. Take care, partner.
Thank you.
All right.